So we were given a solution by someone on Discord,
What?
but I'll just say what it is. So Tsunami Jake, shout out to Tsunami Jake on Discord. He said that maybe prisons should have mascots and colors and sports.
Prisons having mascots, colors, and sports.
Yeah.
Like the longest yard.
The
movie where they
prison.
played football in
Yeah.
prison.
There you go. Right. So thank you to Tsunami Jake for that solution. It's very cool. I don't want to discuss the whole thing, but that's cool. So people should send in their solutions and you'll get a shout out. Or just send in anything and you'll get a shout out on the podcast. Also a little I was listening. Ezra Klein on his podcast is doing a 2-part episode on the birth rate and like whether the birth rate is too high or too little. Yeah,
you sent me a link to one of those.
Yeah, and it's good. And I just wanted to tell everyone we solved it. They don't have a solution, but we already solved it. If you go back to episode 448. The title is A Woman's Issue. We're going to change the title, but basically the idea is like what they talk about in the episode, but then they get totally wrong, is they say every society that implements higher education for women, the birth rate plummets. And then they don't come to the conclusion that we already came to, or I came to, which is like we just need to accelerate the pace that we do education so that everybody can get a master's degree by the age of like 21. And if you did that, then women, the whole birth rate issue would become a non-issue because women would have the freedom to have both a great education and start families in their 20s or whatever when they are most sort of capable of doing that. So anyways, they, for some reason, I think it's because they're just, Ezra Klein and his guests are just like way overeducated. And so they can't think about like changing education to be better, like shorter. Anyways, so we have a solution to that too. So there you go. There's 2 solutions in the wild.
As 2 in the wild. Very nice.
Kickoff. Yeah. How are you doing, Scott? I see this funny cat cam you've just added to the screen.
I'm learning to put graphics and things on.
Is that the actual cat live?
Yeah, it's right here. So if I reach over in front of it.
He wasn't moving at all. He was so still.
No, he's sleeping, but let's see if I can.
Oh, you're a cutie kitty.
Yeah, that's a live camera.
It's a great cat cam. And it's got such a nice little graphic around it.
So
that
silly.
Yellow frame. It's hilarious. Well, that's
All right,
great.
I'll turn this off.
That's great.
We're trying to do one with minimal edits because we're going to put it out the same day we record it. We don't
Bing,
normally
bang,
do
boom.
this.
We just do no edits. What do we call that? No fill. Hashtag no edits.
Hashtag it's all in the can.
We're all hanging out, everybody. Everything that goes in comes out the other end.
All right. Well, this is not our usual. I say no edits, and then I would go and cough off the side.
No edits. Okay.
Let me chew into the microphone. What are all the...
wait, let's just do another take here.
The cardinal sins of broadcasting.
Are those given? What are they? What are those? What are the cardinal sins of broadcasting? Eating on mic?
Chewing
coughing,
into the mic.
chewing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Coughing.
We do all these things.
Right. All the things that make us...
We're bad.
that make us great.
Well, I've got a solution. Should I just go straight in? Should we go straight into the solution?
Let's go straight in since there's no edits. We got to
no edits. We got to do it. Okay, so today I'm proposing Zootopia.
No, I think that's already. I saw that actually years ago.
So it's a movie idea that no one's ever come up with before. No, it's about a rabbit.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
The rabbit hold on one second. The rabbit decides to become a police officer. Actually, no, a firefighter. And then she decides she's going to move from the little bumpkin country village she lives in with the rabbit farmers who are farming celery, not carrots, but celery. And then she decides to go to the big city where she becomes a firefighter.
All right.
What do you think?
Now, just stick with me here. This might sound crazy. What would you think if I suggested the names of Jennifer Goodwin and Jason Bateman?
Good choices.
Would those be good?
Choices for your, Scott, for your idea? I think that would be good. I think Jason would be a good choice. There's that a good. That was my Justin Bateman.
Oh, that's the
impression.
Jason Bateman
Jason
impression?
Bateman. Yeah, yeah.
I don't think I have one. I don't know.
No. He
I don't
just
know enough.
he just goes up real high. The more awkward the situation, the higher, and then he puts pauses where they don't belong.
See, everybody, this is a perfect thing that I normally would maybe not make it all the way to the episode.
Okay, this would not get in. Dang it. Okay, let's talk about Zootopia. So what Zootopia is it is it kind of from the movie, but I think it's the deeper meaning of the movie, which is a longing that we have in a post-capitalist industrial society to live in a society where we can enjoy the benefits of technology and trade and science and commerce, but also are not alienated from our own natures. Okay. And I call that concept Zootopia. And I think that's what the movie illustrates, right? So they go in and they have, this whole city, they have all the benefits of technology, but everything's perfectly aligned for each animal's nature.
Mm-hmm.
So the right food, the bunnies are eating carrots and the camels are eating whatever. And the doors are the right size. The houses everything's aligned perfectly. So everyone's nature is catered to. In our society, we don't do that.
You've got the mass transit with all the different sizes of doors for the different sizes of creatures. I'm sure you enjoy that.
And it was multimodal. There was cars too. There was different sized cars and different roads for different sized cars. And it was all multimodal. There was also trains and bikes and stuff too. It was great. It was a great city. So I propose that Zootopia become a primary guiding ideology for policy and government and commerce and everything. Perfect. That we should adopt Zootopia. Okay, and the alternative is, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, step one, we got to get rid of all the humans because I've seen the movie. What? No humans. Step two, we've got to, Planet of the Apes, all the different species of animals and make them all talk and walk.
Up evolve them a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm on board. We can do this. I know a guy, Dr. Moreau. He has an island we can use where he's been really working on these sort of things.
Sign me up. I'm in it. I'm in. So the problem when you don't have Zootopia, you have zookosis. Have you heard that term?
No.
Zoochosis. That's what we are. I think that's what, and not just I think this, but lots of people believe that we're suffering from zookosis.
Is that a real word?
Yeah, it's a real word. What it means is the animals, the disease, the sort of syndrome of symptoms that animals get when they're in zoos and they're not in an environment that matches their nature, that's in accord with their nature. They get zoochosis. It's like when you add cosis onto something, it's like a disease.
Well, yeah. Is that like mixing zoo and psychosis?
Exactly.
Because Zootopia is just zoo plus utopia, which is just a perfect city, right? And so
sure, or just topia means place. So Zootopia means a place of life.
You don't think they were going for utopia, like the perfect city? They were going.
Yeah, Zootopia. Utopia is right there in the word, but it also is just Zootopia. Zone is life, and then topos is place. So you could, it could be. But I think you're probably right. It is kind of utopic, although it's not totally utopic. They have like police and crime, and so it's still a whole problem. It's not like everything's perfect.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that's what they want it to be. That's what they're shooting for.
I mean, they have it pretty well dialed in. Yeah, pretty good. I mean, they've got it pretty good. But I mean, we also have things pretty good. I mean, look at Holland. Holland is already basically a human utopia. There's virtually nothing wrong with it.
So Pixar did one that's kind of similar recently. Have you seen Elemental? Where the
not yet
fire people have to live with the water people and the air people and the earth people,
Yeah. Is it the same thing where they...
It's similar where it's a society supposedly where all four things are supposed to coexist and travel around together and that causes friction and tensions. It's not excuse me.
No edits.
No. I gotta edit those out. I can't.
Okay. We'll edit the cops out.
It's not meant to be a utopia. That's why they call it elemental. It's just meant to be like a bunch of things smushed together. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some people
Yeah.
really hated it. Some people didn't like it very much. I did. I enjoyed myself quite a bit. But
I definitely will watch it. I need to watch that one because I do like Pixar, even if sometimes they miss. I think they missed with Luca, although my wife loves Luca, so I don't know.
Luca's great.
Yeah,
Luca's great.
you like Luca,
I
okay.
do.
But yeah, I mean, I guess in some ways it's all just like metaphors for a multiracial democracy, which, we're very early on in America to have a multiracial democracy. It's only been like 70 years since, or not even 60 years since civil rights. So, I mean, we're only 2 generations or 2.5 generations into a multiracial democracy. We're still trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
But there's a
I
bigger issue though, which is zookosis, I think. Or and I mean not maybe
So
not
tell me
big.
more about zookosis.
So
What's
zookosis is like, have you ever seen like in SeaWorld, like the killer whale's fin on the top, dorsal fin flumps over?
hmm hmm
That's like part of zookosis. It's like a sign that the animal's been living in captivity.
And they can't figure out. I've heard that they can't figure out like
Yeah.
how there's no physiological reason why it's happening other than just
They're not
they've lost
swimming
they've lost
in
their mojo, right?
yeah, they're not like swimming in the open ocean and something. There's some and then for human you see it in animals, tigers who are kept in too small of a cage will just pace back and forth.
hmm
That's a sign of them being in like pretty extreme mental distress from being just like locked up when they're supposed to be ranging across, hundreds of acres of land and hunting and stuff. They get zookosis. And human beings might be suffering from zookosis as well because we are wild animals that sort of domesticated ourselves like 400 years ago, or 400 years ago, 400,000 years ago. We sort of domesticated each other, but
Right.
in a wild context. So we're still a wild animal that was that self domesticated. But now, because of technology and technology and sort of the market and industrialization and the built environment of cities, we really are kind of taming a wild animal, just the human beings. We're kind of putting humans into these sort of zoos. And the question is, are we building zoos, zootopias, or are we building sort of zookosis wards, like these sort of zookosis environments?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are primates. We are, a member of the apes like that. There is something very primal, and you can see that sometimes or feel that when like you have rage surge up, or you feel strong emotions of like love or happiness or any of the strong emotions make you kind of get in touch with that primal nature.
Mm.
And I think also like, doing, I think when I do jujitsu, I get to like a state of relaxation that I don't think I get to pretty much any other time, and that feels very tied to like DNA and primal stuff, and it doesn't feel like it's something that sitting and typing on the keyboard or walking around in clothes and like driving cars, it doesn't come anywhere close to touching, I think there are parts of what we've engineered as a human society that very much cut off things from our just natural animal self. And I do think that affects us in some ways. I bet,
Yeah.
There's not a lot of, when you get the ability to kind of consider existence and your own existence and like zoom out and think about meta things, that comes with a lot of like anxiety and different issues that are going to come along that like my cat is not dealing with because my cat is not pondering those issues.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's some, we see glimpses of it, right? Of like our nature feeling more at ease and feeling more in our environment. I forget where exactly, but I was learning about it's going to sound trite, but some tribe in Africa, right, that was unindustrialized and technological, but they had interactions with more industrialized Africans and also from travelers from other parts of the world.
Mhm.
And one of their impressions was when they were asked, would you ever like to go to like New York? Would you ever like to go to, to like an industrialized place? one of their interesting things they would say, this one tribe would say, was they'd say, no, I'd never want to go there. That's where people jump off of buildings to kill themselves. And that's that was like the craziest thing they could possibly imagine. And that anyone would do that to them was a sign that the whole society was just like sick beyond recognition,
Right.
as something they would want to be a part of,
Sure. Yeah.
Now granted, I'm sure there's a lot of other concerns and they're just anchoring on something, but the fact that they anchor on something that I think even we would say is really distressing, which is like a suicide rate, which is pretty consistent across industrialized countries. Suicide rates are like four in 1,000, or 4 in 1,000, or 4 in 10,000 people commit suicide. Is very consistent, even if society's different. It's very consistent.
I mean, they may not like the idea of possibly jumping off of buildings, but have they tried Candy Crush? Because maybe that would change their mind.
That's true. Or driving like 100 miles an hour on a highway,
Yeah.
with the windows down, and well, maybe not the windows down going 100, but radio on. Yeah.
Maybe riding in an AI thing that's driving for them. I feel like going from a non-car lifestyle to driving, that's a pretty big ask. I don't think it doesn't, if you don't grow up in a car culture, I feel like the idea of having to drive somewhere seems more like, why would you do that to me? Why, like, have someone else do that for me?
Yeah.
Like, why do I have to make decisions at 100 miles an hour in the midst of doing this? That makes no sense.
Right. So we could build a society that was a Zootopia. So it's just an interesting proposal. I think it's different from other proposals for better societies, right? So people would say, let's make society more just, like more fair, more egalitarian. Like that's one like intent, one kind of guiding principle for how to make society better. Another that's maybe a more kind of progressive sort of left wing one. Another one might be like a more of a right wing one, like let's more fully live up to the ideals of tradition, and that's good society, right? A society that more fully lives up to these sort of virtuous traditions, which seems to be kind of a conservative.
Right.
Sort
it
of
feels like
ideal.
one side is sort of like, let's clamp down on people, and that will sort of create the shape of society we want. And the other side's like, kind of let's let loose on people, and that will produce the shape of the society we want.
Yeah, and that's like from the first stage of like, what do you do to people? But the other one's the outcomes, right? So one an egalitarian society wants an outcome where whatever you do, it leads to greater equality, fairness and equality and justice, across not just race and gender and stuff, but also economic stuff. And then the other one says, well, let's not worry maybe so much about the only outcome we really want is that we get to these sort of ideals of tradition, strong men, beautiful women, healthy children, these sort of traditional sort of things. We need to hit these sort of aesthetic,
those ethical, weird traditional people with their desires for healthy children.
Yeah.
Not like us modern smart people. We are like, we don't care if our children are healthy or not. We're just indifferent to that whole idea.
Right. Well, I mean, to some extent, it's more about the equality, right? If you think about it. But anyways, this is sort of proposing another alternative to either of those, right?
Okay.
So if instead of saying, well, we want greater equality and justice, or we want greater sort of living up to these sort of traditional ideals, if you say, no, we just want a society that lives up to our nature and eliminates zookosis from humanity. And signs of zookosis would be like malaise, mental illness, drug addiction, low satisfaction rates with work, low satisfaction rates, high levels of neuroticism, high levels of anxiety. Honestly, I think women are more susceptible to zookosis than men. I think maybe because of the patriarchy.
No, it's because men have those big strong muscles, so
we can fight.
We're too strong.
The zookosis.
We just punch zookosis when it gets near us with our.
You're the
our
Brazilian
fists.
jiu-jitsu. You put them in like a clamp lock.
That's exactly why.
A double leg clamp lock.
Mm-hmm.
Take that. Well, I was gonna say because of patriarch, men have basically built society, and I think we've built it wrong even for men, but we've made it even worse, I think, for women than for men. Just because, like, for example, if we've made a society that's kind of lonely, which I think is universally believed, if we built a society that's kind of lonely, women are more social than men, so the loneliness is even worse for them, right? Right. And if we've built a society that's sort of disjointed socially by kind of having people move away from their nuclear families and having people, moving all over the country and world all the time and kind of totally disjointed, for men, we're, evolutionarily, we would have like wandered off from the tribe and like joined other tribes. Whereas women would have like been kind of closer into their tribe, their band. I think that's a well-known thing about human beings. Just like you see with chimps, the males just wander off and spend time separate from any band and then join other bands. Whereas the women chimps stay more close into the band that they're in. So our society that lets everybody move, the men, it kind of is an analog to like maybe a male experience, or the average male. Maybe it's just all statements of trends, right? Women can have all kinds of lives and desires and things, but I'm just saying it's a statement of a trend.
Maybe even in gorilla cultures, like guys go through this phase of just being like insufferable and terrible, and they're just like, they wanted to talk about, they're like, hey, you know what, I have some ideas for a jungle startup that we could like actually, if you want to hear my new ideas for how we can really climb these trees, look, if you climb a tree 1% more efficiently every day, then by the end of the year, and you're like, you need to go and walk around another,
get out of here, please leave.
Like, just male apes get to a certain age and they're just like, okay, you need some time. Like, you might go find some other people who aren't already tired of you and didn't see you grow up, and maybe they'll find you interesting, but not here, my guy.
We've seen where all this has come from. It's boring. It's tiresome. Please get out of here. I think that probably is.
What was it, 2 years ago you were taking your poop and throwing it against that thing over there? Yeah. Don't try and convince us you're some sort of like super genius now.
I guess it is, right? That's what young males, they probably get sort of annoying. They get a little aggressive. They get a little bit like kind of sticking their fingers where they don't belong.
It certainly happens
like, get
for
the hell
humans.
out of here, and then they kind of wander off. And it serves an evolutionary purpose, right? Because it serves this sort of widening gene pool.
Right.
And sort of spreads
genes. Right. We are the dandelion, the floating dandelion things trying to find a new spot.
Right. And so we're more comfortable with a little bit more loneliness. We're a little more comfortable. I think it's even too lonely for men. I think, it's just too much.
I want to make it clear. I don't think there are necessarily these differences between men and women. I'm just playing into the joke of it. But
yeah. You don't think there's a difference? You don't think women are more social? Look at how they behave. How could it not?
I don't know. I think
they seem more social.
Some of it is like,
that's not a diss. I actually think it's probably better to be more social than to be like more of a loner.
My brain is thinking like, is it that women are naturally more social, or because of the patriarchy society we've set up, they have to become more social? Like, is it?
But chimps behave that way. Is the thing. It makes me think we're like chimps. Even baboons, the same thing. Baboons, chimps, all of them. The men will wander off and the women will stay closer.
But don't chimps like also eat other chimps? Like
so do baboons.
So not everything.
We've stopped the eating. We've stopped the eating.
What if zookosis? Scientists find out that zookosis is caused by us not fully experiencing like the eating
cannibalism.
Yeah, right. Like they're like, you need to be like full animals, which means eating other, like you need to fight each other in the streets and then eat each other.
So there's also, it turns out there's a video game called Zoochosis that looks horrifying. It's like a horror game where animals are being killed by like an alien monster and you have to like kill the alien monster. This is not what I mean by Zoochosis.
No, people shouldn't go by the video game version of it.
So the idea of Zoochosis in humans is a mental health theory that is, I don't know how well documented. I can look it up on Google Scholar quick, but
remember, you got to go quick, no edits.
So if I say zookosis humans, then you can see there's a few. Yeah, this is not a lot of citations. This is like very much like a wackadoo. I'm talking about a wackadoo thing here, just so you know.
So just so I understand, the practical version of how we would, like you're like we got to get to a Zootopia, but how would you? What are the steps to like what? Where do you start?
Well, I don't. I guess I'm more just like proposing. What do you think? What if people thought about it that way instead of saying egalitarianism or socialism or capitalism or conservatism, and instead they were like Zootopia. Let's try to make a society that is in a line as closely as possible with our natures.
But then it becomes a question of what is our. That's a question. What's our nature? That's a question that they've been trying to answer forever, right? Like,
and I think you're right, and I think part of it, the dangerous part, would be to try to define positively our nature is this way, therefore constrain people to that. I think that's not good, right? I think the better idea would be to say what is it not in our nature to do, and try to avoid bad things rather than try to constrain people to a certain sort of mold. Right. But it's the same question. What is our nature? It's just the response of whether do we eliminate things that are not in our nature, or do we constrain people to a sort of positive impression of what our nature is. The second one is dangerous, because if people, especially humans, there's a lot of humans who are just wacky and they go way outside, drive way outside the lines. And I think that's fine and good for them to do, as long as they don't like hurt other people. But there's a lot of things in our society that are just against our nature, and we just persist. We just keep them. And they're clearly like causing people.
Well, I was going to say
problems.
The first one where you just start eliminating things you see as problems. I feel like isn't that how we got to here? Like, isn't that
yeah, right?
Like you would just be
we're
like,
out of food. Let's make agriculture.
It's a problem to steal things, so let's make stealing illegal. It's a problem to kill people. Let's make killing. Let's outlaw these things so that we can build our society to the next level of
maybe one theory that would help us is this guy named Ivan Illich, who is a sort of social theorist who was Austrian, but he worked in Mexico in the 60s. Actually, my dad met him a few times when he was down there. But he's a well-known social theorist guy. He's kind of like a little bit of a Marxian, but he's not explicitly like Marxist. And anyways, he had this whole theory that he called conviviality or hyper-industrialization. Those are opposites. So hyper-industrialization is when you industrialize too far and you start to eliminate what he called conviviality, which is kind of what I'm describing as Zootopia, but I'm using a more of like a biological framework for it, and he's using more of a kind of, I don't know, common sense. Like he's just saying what's convivial, what is like a nice way for humans to live. I'm saying like, no, let's look at the actual biology of like human nature and then use that as a model for Zootopia. Whereas he was just sort of saying, let's be sort of. Anyways, so Ivan Illich describes this idea of hyper industrialization. And I think we can use that as an kind of as a model for what's going on in our society. We've industrialization was good. Like you said, it solved these problems. Let's solve this problem, solve that problem, solve this problem. But then what it led to is like too much, and we started to get diminishing returns, and then we even started to get inverted negative returns because we surpassed.
They're like, oh, pumping all this coal dust into the air makes everyone's health go way down.
Down. Yeah.
Pumping all this carbon dioxide into the atmosphere makes the global warming go way up. This is not. Maybe we should.
The seeking for profits over all other goods has caused mental illness and caused all kinds of anxieties and depressions and yeah, exactly. Separated mother from child. Separated. At this point, we're in a position where most technologically advanced children, at least in America, don't have a childhood. That doesn't seem like a good idea,
Like they just are exposed right away to.
They just immediately are put on phones, and they just spend hours every day on screens, and they don't go outside, they don't play. And when they do play, it's completely like observed by their parents and like moderated by their parents, which is not play. We all know
Right.
that when adults were around, we didn't really play. And then when adults were gone, we actually did some like serious play. We like
Yeah.
actually we could do some fun stuff. So like basically, and this is not me saying this, this is Jonathan Haidt, one of the leading psychologists today, is going on TV right now. He's selling his whole book, something anxiety generation, where he talks all about this. And I just saw him on, he's on the New York Times, he's on Joe Rogan, he's on everything saying this. And I don't think he's wrong. I think he's wrong about other things about his psychology stuff that he does, but he's not wrong about this. He's really saying like, this is a big problem. Children are not having a childhood anymore. That's the opposite of Zootopia. That's the opposite of conviviality.
Yeah, there's gonna be some.
That's not good.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we have a generation of people that grew up with a certain set of issues, but I think there's another, not being able to go out and really experience the world until you're a certain age is gonna cause a whole nother set of issues with people who are just like, like letting people loose. Some people will handle it. Some people it's just gonna be way too much, like all at once. It's I don't
it's
know.
not good.
The
But
trade-offs.
anyways, it's just all these things that I hear. I'm kind of synthesizing all of this into this. Maybe we're doing a theories from the multiverse today, kind of synthesizing everything into this term, this idea of Zootopia. And then its opposite, zookosis. So when you don't have Zootopia, you'll see increases in zookosis, which will be, anxiety, depression, low level mental illness will go up. And we've talked about this before with the attachment issue, right? So if we force women and men to go to work right after they've had a kid, and we don't give them the first year to 3 years of a child's life to form proper attachments, then, and if we then we'll have major zookosis. It's just like if you said, hey, we have the baby seal is born, and then we keep the mother seal in a different cage from the baby seal. It's like, well, you're gonna harm the baby seal that way. Like, it's so obvious. Like, the mother and the baby need to stay together, and the dad should probably be there too, unless, like, I don't know, dad seals like eat the babies or something. Like, I don't know what the nature of seals are, but in the nature of humans, like, everybody should be like around the baby, forming connections and bonds.
Right. Or they should be allowed to form whatever connections and bonds that they would do in the wild, right? Like, there are some, I think, polar bears, like the dads have to be out of the picture.
Maybe
but
the
like,
dads just need to go. Yeah.
But some species, they're like, yeah, we do this as a group. And some species do it not just as like a parent-child group, but as like a group of parents and a group of children, It's like,
right.
I think when we pull people, zoos are this whole thing where it's like, it's good to be able to see animals up close and kind of get a safe experience that close to a real animal, but it's also terrible to remove an animal from its natural spot just so we can like oogle at it and point at it and take pictures. So it's
I'm going to the San Diego Zoo next weekend.
Great.
So we'll see. I'll report back what animals I thought had zookosis and what animals didn't.
I feel very conflicted about American zoos anyway, but going to zoos in Japan, I was like, oh, American zoos actually take a lot more.
Yeah, I think American zoos actually, really try to do
some places in the world where they're just like, no, these are animals. They're animals. Put them on display. Make them. There was like a rhino so in Asahikawa, which is in Hokkaido, is one of the most famous zoos in Japan, and I went to the zoo there, and they have like a rhino just standing on like a small concrete pillar, basically like rhino-sized pillar, and they're like, look, there's a rhino, and you're like, yeah, of course there's the rhino. It can't go anywhere else. It just has to kind of, like you're saying, pace back and forth, and that's all it can do. But it's
good, like on a plinth. Yeah,
right. American zoos have been better than that, but still, now we're in the age of high frame rate 4K, 8K film and documentarians who can go out and get it. So I'm like almost at the point where I'm like, I don't know. I think I'm good just seeing it on on screens and stuff now.
Or make the zoos like, like the San Diego Zoo. I've never been to San Diego Zoo, but I've heard it's like an experience, like a safari. The animals are like in a huge environment that is, they're not going to be experiencing zoochosis in the same way.
I think they do it the best, yeah.
But you could just say the laws are you have to meet that standard, and then the zoos would just have fewer animals, right? I mean, that's the only thing. The zoo could still operate; it just has to have fewer animals, give them more space,
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's probably low on the list of people's priorities because they're like, we gotta.
Well, I'd like the human zoo to be better first. Yeah, I'd like the human zoo to be better.
That's what is. If you're like, hey, we need to take care of, they're like, we got people problems we need to take care of.
Yeah.
You can always divert someone to somewhere else.
Although the Japanese could do it. They don't have as many people problems. I mean, they have people problems, but like
there are a bunch of people problems there.
Yeah, but how they definitely are. I think they are having zoochosis. This also comes back to what I was talking about a little bit at the beginning, which is the birth rate thing.
Mm.
In some ways, not having babies, that's what animals do when they have zoochosis. Right? When animals are like, oh, they're in the wild, they would have this many children, but we can't get them to breed in captivity. We don't know why. It's like that's zoochosis, right? That's a sign that you've put them in an environment that's not natural, that's not fitting with their nature. And one of those signs of zoochosis is no reproduction, whether it's not having sex or not being fertile or whatever it is. And if you look at Korea, they hyper industrialized very rapidly. If you go to Korea, it is gray. It is like cement everywhere, and it is like a gray.
I'm sure there's some
cold,
neon and
neon. Oh, great, yeah. But they hyper industrialized, and now their birth rate's 0.7. 0.7. That's 2.2 is just steady state, right? Because the 0.2 are the counts for people who die.
Okay.
And then 2 is replacement. So 2.2 is replacement. 0.7 is less than 50% replacement, which means that in one generation, their population will go down by half, more than half.
Wow.
So right now there's 50 million Koreans. If they keep this up for 40 years, there'll only be 25 million Koreans. So half as many Koreans.
It's going to be twice as easy to get into a Korean girl band or boy band.
That's true. You're looking at the upside.
Oh my goodness.
Some major upsides.
Right now, the competition to get into one of those is just incredible. But you're telling me that in a mere 50, just naturally, I'm going to have my shots are going to double. I like this.
You'll be old, but
I'll
knows?
Be
spry. You could be spry.
The old member, like how they every member of the group has a thing. Like there's the bad boy, and I'll be the like super old guy.
That's always what people are looking for in boy bands.
Yeah, for my verse in the song, I'll just be like, hey, hello.
I remember when.
And there'll be like a really weird group of fans that are just like
that are super into you,
way into me.
They're really into you. But do you know about Scott? Oh yeah, Scott. He's great.
I like.
They really went out on a limb to get Scott in there, but I think they did a good choice. I think he's really great.
You've done a bad job. Now you have me all the way off of your idea because now I want yes.
Well, I mean, there's all this birth rate stuff is kind of interesting because it's like, well, people can do whatever they want. If women want to have fewer children, it's up to them. You can kind of see it as like a personal choice thing.
But
then you look at it and you're like, but this is clearly a sign that things have gone off the rail. Like this is a sign that something's bad, right? Like,
yeah, but the statement, if women want to have more children, that's up to them. And then being like, well, then maybe that's not so. Because see, any alternative to that is if women don't want to have children, that's not up to them. And that feels like no part of that is right.
No, it is. Exactly. Well, that's the danger. The danger is right-wing powers who are not faint of heart about reducing people's rights. They can come in and say, well, I've got an explanation. I've got a solution. We'll just like take these women and have them not go to school anymore. Look at that. All of a sudden we got moms in the kitchen, Handmaid's Tale. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what I'm trying to propose is I think if a Zootopian approach could be a left wing or a not even left wing, just a sort of not fascist, not gender or patriarchal approach to to solving, among other things. I mean, I think it would solve lots of things. I think a lot of these issues that we're facing in the developed countries are zookosis. I think that's a kind of fringe idea, but I wonder if it shouldn't be so fringe.
But I guess I don't understand if you're trying to say, hey, everyone, be more Zootopian, or what?
Yeah, let's make
everyone
Zootopian
follow
policies.
your nature.
Yeah, let's use Zootopian policies. So, for instance, attachment. Scientists will tell you that with evidence and proof that human beings form attachments in the first years of life, and that those attachments are deeply, deeply important for the well functioning of our psyche for the rest of our lives.
Sure.
That's not like a religion that some guy made up 1,000 years ago. Right. That's science. We figured out in the last 50 years. And so that'd be Zootopian. Okay, let's make a raft of policies that support human attachment. Boom. And it would probably be the obvious things, parental leave and da-da-da-da-da. But there's other things about human nature, like these questions about loneliness and community, which we'd have to find the actual science to really show it. There is that number, you talked about it to me the other day, the 150
Dunbar's number.
Yeah, Dunbar's number. Do you want to tell people, because you just had a brush with Dunbar himself or something, right? Didn't you?
I was editing. Yeah, I was editing a podcast that he was the guest on, so I heard a long interview of his. And Dunbar's number is he's talking about, like, historically there's a number of people that you can kind of group and can have a strong connection with, or you're not going to have strong connections with thousands and thousands of people, like just across time and across cultures. It seems to be about 150. They were saying 150 is like the number of human connections before you really just can't manage it anymore. So
there you go. So that's there's science behind that. So that's some kind of starts to propose this idea that we need to have, like, support for human communities, human connection, right? And you might think, well, people just do that without us having to support it. It's like, well, clearly not. People are saying they're lonely, and people are saying they don't have any friends. Like, we might actually need to make policies and actually structures in society. Maybe even the built environment needs to be made in such a way that, just like in Zootopia, they had like the little doors for like the little mice, and then the doors for the rabbits, and the doors for the giraffes. Like, we might actually have to build the environment in such a way that it suits our natures. With, I don't know, piazzas, or public transit, or just getting cars, because cars are dangerous and cut up neighborhoods so people can't connect. Maybe just getting cars out of a third of all streets, so 30% of streets have no cars, just as an example of, like, what you could do.
Well, and they say it's way more successful to change the environment than to try to alter people's to change the environment so that it naturally creates the behavior you're wanting to incentivize, instead of trying to just scold people into doing the right thing.
Right. Yeah. No, you don't want to do anything like that. No. And you certainly don't want to take rights away from people. And you certainly don't want to, make them conform to some mold of, like, nature that you're supposed to be. That's all bullshit, because part of human nature is, like, choice and controlled randomness, where we, like, go off and try new things and do that's part of human nature. So you don't want to constrain that. But yeah, I wonder if this is a way to approach where it's not left, it's not right, it's not conservative, it's not socialist, it's Zootopian. And people can ask you, what's your politics? And you can say, Zootopian. I think we should live in a world where society suits and upholds our nature as human beings.
Okay.
And you couldn't say that 50 years ago, because we didn't have the science. We didn't know about attachment theory. We didn't know Dunbar's number. We didn't know, about the effects of loneliness on people. We didn't know about these things.
We didn't have the movie Zootopia. People wouldn't understand the reference at all.
No one would have gotten it.
It would have been 1974. You would have had to been like, hey, man, dude, what do you think, man? I don't know. It wouldn't have worked out. You're right. We had to wait 50 years.
50 years ago was only 1974. Okay, sorry, 70 years ago.
That's how math works.
70 years ago, we didn't have it. God, we're old. Well, cool. I don't know. This was sort of about movies, which is part of solutions. I feel like we're always talking about movies, but it took Zootopia to a deep, deep, profound philosophical level. So next time you're watching that little bunny bounce around on the screen with her fox friend, you can be like, whoa, this is deep.
You're like, this is about more than just what they're saying. Oh, wait a minute. All cartoon. Wait, movies have like themes and
meanings
stuff? Oh my gosh, this is blowing my mind.
Do I sound like an insufferable adolescent gorilla right now?
No.
Get out of our troop of gorillas.
But when you rear back and like bang on your chest real big, I mean, then
I do.
I mean, yeah.
Is that what you guys do at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Is that a common move?
That's the most common move. You're not allowed to finish a match without doing that at least once.
Well, thanks everybody for listening to this no edit.
I know this is the closest we're going to get to like a live stream, because I'll basically end this, go back and upload it, and it'll be out
done
today.
All right. We'll see everybody in the soup. Please message us.
See you in the soup.
Start a bit of a dialogue. Yeah, see you in the soup. You've never heard that?
What kind of soup?
I'm thinking like a little bit of a broccoli. Maybe some broccoli floating by. Maybe some mushrooms. Are you thinking like a chili? You're thinking like beans.
I was going tomato.
You know what I like to make is a wild rice soup. So good. I make it with cashew instead of milk, so it's like dairy free. It's so good.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me over. I'll come over for some wild rice soup.
Wild rice soup. Just bring some celery and some carrots. I got everything else we need.
I make a mean stone soup. Have you had stone soup before?
Yeah, stone soup. That's like everything, right? That's like whatever you got in the kitchen.
No, I put in the magic stones, and then my neighbor puts in I just need some onions. He puts in, and then another neighbor brings in some carrots. Have you seen this? Do you know this story?
I just know what a stone soup is. Stone soup is whatever you got in the fridge, whatever you got in the house.
Oh, okay. It's an old kid story where a guy tricks a bunch of people who are mad at each other and not wanting to cooperate into making soup together, and then by the end of it, they're all friends. So, shout out to Stone Soup, the kids' book.
Get your stones ready, everybody.
All right.
Thanks everybody for listening. Go live your Zootopia.
Enjoy. Be in the soup. What is that? Be in the soup?
See you in the soup.
See you in the soup, everybody.
See you in the soup.
Bye.
Bye-bye.